It all started one cloudy morning, when I was hurriedly summoned to the palace. My name is Tunde, a loyal servant of King Adisa of Oyo Kingdom. The news that wise Ife, the village oracle, had something urgent to say to the king sent a chill down my spine. Upon arriving at the palace, I was immediately taken to the throne room, where Ife was already there, with her presence always so imposing and mysterious. "Your Majesty, Tunde has arrived," one of the guards announced. "Come in, Tunde," King Adisa replied with a serious countenance. I approached, trying to hide my apprehension. Ife stood next to the throne, her piercing eyes fixed on me. "Tunde," she began, her voice echoing through the room, "I bring grave news from the oracle. King Adisa is destined to die within 7 days, and without him, the Oyo Kingdom will fall from grace." Those words fell like a storm over us. King Adisa stood up abruptly, disbelief written all over his face. "This cannot be true, Ife." "There must be a mistake," exclaimed the king. "There is no mistake, Your Majesty," replied Ife firmly. "But there is hope. There is a sacred artifact, the amulet of Orunmila, that can prevent his death." The king looked at me, his eyes full of expectation and fear. "Tunde, you are one of the most loyal and courageous servants in this kingdom. I need you to find this amulet and bring hope back to Oyo," he said. "Your Majesty, I will do everything in my power to save you and our kingdom," I replied with determination. Without wasting any time, I prepared myself for the journey. The first stage of my mission was fraught with danger. I faced mystical creatures and natural adversities that tested my courage and endurance. In a moment of exhaustion, I found Amina, a fearless warrior who, upon learning of my purpose, decided to join me. "You can't do this alone, Tunde. I will help you find the amulet and save our king," Amina said, with a gleam of determination in her eyes. Amina was an invaluable companion. Together, we faced countless challenges, supporting each other in times of difficulty. Our first concrete clue came in an ancient cave where we found inscriptions that pointed to an enchanted forest as our next destination. The enchanted forest. "This won't be easy, Tunde," Amina said as we looked through the inscriptions. "If that's where the amulet is, that's where we'll go," I replied, trying to hide my nervousness. As we entered the forest, we were faced with illusory challenges that tested our courage and purity. The forest felt alive, and each step seemed to take us deeper into a maze of mysteries. In the heart of the forest, we find the guardian, an ancestral spirit called Ikeen. "Who dares to enter the forest of Orunmila?" asked Ikeen, his voice reverberating around us. "We are Tunde and Amina, from the Oyo Kingdom. We seek Orunmila's amulet to save our king," I replied firmly. Ikeen looked at us intensely before speaking again. "To prove your worth, you must go through a series of trials that will test your intelligence, honesty, and courage." Ikeen's trials were challenging. One of them required us to decipher a complex riddle, another required us to cross an invisible bridge over an abyss. With Amina's help, we were able to overcome each challenge. "You have proven yourself worthy," Ikeen said finally. "Orunmila's amulet is kept in the temple east of this forest. But beware, Tunde. An imminent betrayal awaits you in Oyo." With that warning, we set off back to the kingdom, aware that time was running out. The journey back was quick, but what we found upon arrival was even more disturbing. King Adisa was seriously ill, and his condition was getting worse every day. "The king's illness does not seem natural, Tunde," said Amina, as we watched the king from his bed. My suspicions soon turned to Kofi, an advisor to the king known for his excessive ambition. With Amina by my side, I began a secret investigation to uncover the truth behind the king's illness. "Tunde, we found something," Amina said, showing me a vial hidden in Kofi's quarters. It was the proof we needed. But we knew that unmasking Kofi wouldn't be easy. We needed a plan. we will confront him before the king and the court. The evidence is irrefutable, Amina said with conviction. And so, the plan was drawn up. During a large meeting at the palace, I presented the evidence of the poisoning, confronting Kofi in front of everyone. These are serious accusations, Tunde, Kofi exclaimed, trying to defend himself. But the proof is here, Kofi. You betrayed our king and our kingdom, I replied, my voice firm. In a last desperate effort, Kofi tried to attack me, but was stopped by Amina and the palace guards. King Adissa, shaken by the betrayal, ordered Kofi's arrest. I gave the amulet to the king, hoping that he would regain his health. But there was still something missing. Desperate, I consulted the wise Ife again, who revealed the hidden truth. The king's salvation lay in his own inner transformation. Your Majesty, it is your humility and wisdom that will break this curse, he told King Adissa. The king, touched by my words, gave a public speech, admitting his mistakes and promising to lead with more compassion and justice. Miraculously, his health began to improve. Kofi was banished from the kingdom, and I, Tunde, was celebrated as a hero. The Oyo kingdom entered a new era of prosperity and peace, with a renewed king and a servant who became a symbol of loyalty and courage. Now, as a respected advisor, I looked to the future with hope and determination. As we entered the enchanted forest, I immediately felt a change in the air. The trees, with thick trunks and dense foliage, seemed to whisper ancient secrets. The sunlight barely penetrated between the intertwined branches, creating an almost dreamlike scene. Beside me, Amina kept her expression firm, but I could tell that even she was being affected by the mystical aura of that place. Tunde, do you feel it? Amina asked, breaking the silence. Yes, it's as if the forest itself is watching us, I replied, trying not to let my uneasiness show. As we walked forward, the forest seemed to test us with every step. At one point, we were faced with an illusion of a deep abyss, which almost made us give up. Amina, with her usual courage, threw a stone and discovered that the abyss was nothing more than a mirage. Tunde, remember, nothing here is as it seems, she warned, holding my hand to guide me along the safe path. As we delved deeper, the challenges became more intense. Mystical creatures appeared out of nowhere, trying to divert us from the path. One of these creatures, a forest spirit, appeared before us, demanding that we answer a riddle in order to proceed. What's something that the more you take away, the bigger it gets? Asked the creature, with glowing eyes and an ethereal voice. I thought for a moment, remembering old stories my grandmother used to tell. A hole, I replied, confidently. The creature smiled and disappeared, allowing us to continue on our way. Finally, we reached the heart of the forest, where a clearing lit by golden light awaited us. In the center, a majestic-looking ancestral spirit watched us. This was Ikeen, the guardian. Welcome, travelers. To attain the amulet of Orunmila, you must pass through my trials, proclaimed Ikeen in a deep, resonant voice. We're ready, I declared, feeling a mix of determination and apprehension. Ikeen put me through a series of tests. The first tested my intelligence. He sat me in front of a board with intricate pieces and challenged me to solve an ancient riddle. With the help of Amina, who pointed out details that I hadn't noticed, I managed to solve the enigma. Intelligence you have, said Ikeen. But what about your honesty? The second test involved a series of questions about my journey and intentions. Every answer I gave was meticulously analyzed by Ikeen. At one point he asked, if you had to choose between saving the king and saving yourself, what would you do? I would save the king, I replied without hesitation. My life is dedicated to him and the Oyo kingdom. Without him, we are all lost. Ikeen seemed satisfied with my answer. Honesty you have shown. Now your courage remains. In the last test, Ikin took me to a cliff and ordered me to jump, trusting that the forest would protect me. I looked at Amina, who encouraged me with a firm look. "Trust yourself, Tunde," she said softly. With my heart racing, I took a step forward and jumped. To my surprise, I was gently placed on the ground by the forest's magic. Ikin appeared beside me, smiling. "You have proven your worth. The amulet of Orunmila is hidden in the oldest tree in the forest. Use it wisely," said Ikin, handing me a detailed map. Before we left, Ikin gave us one last warning. "Be careful, Tunde. There is treachery within your own kingdom. Return quickly and be alert." With the amulet in hand and Ikin's warning echoing in my mind, Amina and I hurried back to Oyo, determined to save our king and our kingdom before it was too late. As we returned to Oyo Kingdom, the first thing I noticed was the heaviness in the air. The faces of the inhabitants were full of concern and fear. When we finally arrived at the palace, I was shocked to see the state of King Adissa. His skin was pale, and he looked like he had aged decades in just a few days. The situation was serious. "Amina, we need to investigate this immediately. Something tells me that this illness of the king is not natural," I whispered to my companion. She nodded, her eyes shining with determination. We wasted no time and began our secret investigation. First, we speak to the king's healers. Most of them were perplexed by Adissa's rapidly deteriorating health. "The symptoms do not correspond to any known disease, Tunde. It's as if something is slowly sucking the life out of our king," explained one of the healers, his voice trembling. This only increased my suspicions of poisoning. We then decided to take a closer look at those who had direct access to the king. That's when our attention turned to Kofi, one of Adissa's closest advisors. Kofi was always ambitious, and it was rumored that he wanted the throne for himself. "We need concrete evidence, Tunde. We can't just accuse Kofi without evidence," Amina warned me. I agreed, and we began to discreetly follow Kofi. One night, while he thought he was alone in the palace garden, whispering to one of his trusted men, we hid behind a column to listen. "Everything is going according to plan. Soon, the throne will be mine. Make sure the poison dosage is not changed," Kofi ordered. My heart raced. Finally, the proof we needed. But we knew that exposing Kofi wouldn't be easy. He had many powerful allies. We decided to seek support from other advisors loyal to the king and, especially, from Ife, the wise oracle. "Ife, we have proof that Kofi is poisoning the king. We need to unmask him before it's too late," I explained desperately. Ife pondered for a moment before responding. "You guys need to lure Kofi into a trap. Make him incriminate himself in front of reliable witnesses." With a plan in mind, I returned to the palace. I organized a meeting with all the advisors, including Kofi, under the pretext of discussing the king's health. During the meeting, I asked for the floor. "My dear advisors, we have discovered something terrible. There is evidence that someone very close to the king is poisoning him. And that person is here, among us," I declared, looking directly at Kofi. He took a step forward, trying to maintain his composure. "That is a serious accusation, Tunde. Do you have any proof?" he challenged, with a sarcastic smile. Before he could continue, Amina emerged with the vial of poison we found hidden in Kofi's quarters. "Here is the proof. This vial contains the poison that is killing King Adissa," she said, showing the vial to the counselors. Kofi turned pale, but still tried to deny it. "This is a trick. They're trying to frame me," he exclaimed, but his voice was shaking. It was then that one of the other counselors, who had overheard our conversation with Ife, intervened. I heard Kofi admitting his guilt in the palace garden. "He himself said he was poisoning the king," he revealed, causing a murmur of shock among those present. With the irrefutable evidence and testimony against him, Kofi realized there was no way out. In a last desperate effort, he tried to attack, but was quickly stopped by Amina and the palace guards. The king, still weak but now aware of the betrayal of someone so close, ordered Kofi to be arrested immediately. With the traitor unmasked, I finally delivered the amulet of Orunmila to the king, hoping that this would reverse his condition. However, even with the amulet, the king's health did not improve immediately. It was then that I realized that our journey was not over yet. Something crucial was still missing to save our sovereign. The palace was filled with murmurs and curious glances as everyone gathered in the great hall. I, Tunde, had my heart racing, knowing that this moment could decide the fate of our kingdom. Amina was by my side, her firm and determined presence giving me the courage I needed to move forward. "Are you ready, Tunde?" Amina's voice was a quiet whisper, but full of strength. "Yes, Amina. We need to do this for the king and for Oyo," I replied, trying to contain my nervousness. King Adissa was sitting on his throne, visibly weakened, but with an attentive look. Beside him, Kofi maintained an expression of false concern, which I now knew was just a mask to hide his betrayal. I took a deep breath and took a step forward, catching everyone's attention. "Your Majesty, members of the court, I ask for the floor to bring to light a truth that has been hidden from us all." Kofi raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised, but tried to maintain his composure. "What do you have to say, Tunde?" "Your Majesty," I began, turning to the king, "your illness is not natural. It was caused by someone close to you, someone we trusted blindly. I have brought proof that Kofi, your advisor, is responsible for the poisoning." The room fell silent, and Kofi stepped forward, his voice thick with mock indignation. "This is an outrage. How dare you accuse me without proof?" I remained calm and held up a small vial containing a greenish liquid. "Here is the proof, Your Majesty." This vial was found in Kofi's quarters. It is a poison known for its slow and deadly properties, exactly how his condition has been manifesting itself. King Adissa looked at the vial and then at Kofi, his expression a mixture of pain and disbelief. "Kofi, do you have anything to say in your defense?" Kofi tried to keep up the facade, but his nervousness was evident. "This is a setup. Tunde and Amina are trying to frame me." Amina took a step forward. "We also found letters, Your Majesty, letters that Kofi exchanged with an alchemist outside the kingdom, detailing the composition of the poison. Here are the letters." I handed the letters to the king, who read them with an increasingly somber expression. "Kofi, how do you explain this?" Kofi, seeing that his lies were crumbling, launched one last desperate attack. "You won't take me down that easily." He advanced towards me, but Amina was faster. With one agile movement, she intercepted Kofi, pinning him down as palace guards rushed to help. King Adissa stood up with difficulty, his voice weak but firm. "Guards, arrest Kofi. He will be judged for his treason." As Kofi was dragged out of the hall, still struggling and screaming, I approached the king with the amulet of Orunmila in hand. "Your Majesty, this is the amulet that can help you regain your health." The king took the amulet, his expression softening for a moment. "Thank you, Tunde. You have proven yourself to be a loyal and brave servant. But I feel that I am not out of the woods yet." Those words echoed in my mind as I watched the king hold the amulet. Something was still missing, and I knew we would need to find out what it was to ensure the king's full recovery. Looking at Amina, I saw the same determination in her eyes. "We need to continue, Tunde. We haven't finished our mission yet." I nodded, knowing the next step would be crucial. The battle was far from over, and Oyo's future still hung in the balance. With the betrayal revealed, We had a chance to save our kingdom, but the real challenge was yet to come. Upon returning to the palace, with the amulet in hand, I felt an enormous weight of responsibility. King Edissa remained seriously ill, and the amulet, which should have been the key to his recovery, seemed to have no effect. Desperate, I decided to look for the wise Ife again, hoping to find a definitive solution. I arrived at Ife hut at dusk. Soft candlelight illuminated the room, and the scent of sacred herbs filled the air. Ife was waiting for me, with a serene and penetrating gaze. Ife, the amulet didn't work as we expected, I said, trying to hide the desperation in my voice. What else can we do to save the king? Ife closed her eyes for a moment, as if seeking answers on a higher plane. After a brief silence, she spoke. Tunde, the amulet is only part of the solution. The true power to save the king lies within himself. He needs to recognize his flaws and govern with true humility and wisdom. But how can I make the king understand this? I asked, feeling the weight of the mission. You must talk to him, Tunde. With sincerity and courage. Tell him what you saw and felt during your journey. A leader's heart must be pure and open to his people. I returned to the palace with a mix of hope and anxiety. Edissa was lying on his bed, pale and weak. I approached and, holding his hand, began to speak. My king, during my journey, I learned many things. I faced challenges that tested my courage and loyalty. But the greatest teaching I received was from Ife. She made me realize that true salvation is not just in an amulet, but in inner transformation. You need to recognize your faults and govern with humility and wisdom. Edissa looked at me with tired but attentive eyes. His voice was weak but determined. Tunde, I have always trusted you. Tell me, what do I need to do? I took a deep breath and continued. You need to open up to your people, recognize your mistakes, and promise to be a more just and compassionate leader. This is the only way to break the curse. The next day, a large meeting was called at the palace. The hall was packed with members of the court and citizens of the kingdom. Edissa, with the help of Amina and me, stood up and gave an emotional speech. My people, today I am here not only as your king, but as a man who recognizes his faults. I know that I made mistakes and that I was often arrogant. I promise, from today onwards, to govern with more compassion, justice, and humility. I want to be a leader worthy of your love and loyalty. As he spoke, something incredible happened. A soft light enveloped the king, and his appearance began to change. The color returned to his face, and his posture became firmer. It was as if an invisible force was healing him from the inside out. The crowd began to applaud and cheer the king, and I felt a wave of relief and joy. The king's health was being restored before our eyes. After the speech, Edissa turned to me and said, Tunde, you saved not only my life, but the future of the entire kingdom. You are a hero, and your wisdom and courage will be remembered forever. Kofi, for his treachery, was banished from the kingdom, and a new era of prosperity and peace began in Oyo. I was promoted to advisor to the king, a title I accepted with humility and gratitude. As he looked to the future, he knew that with a renewed leader and a united people, Oyo would become an example of justice and prosperity. And so, the kingdom celebrated King Edissa's recovery, and I, Tunde, looked to the horizon with hope and determination, knowing that together, we could face any challenge that came.